we have trivialized world peace so much
Right. Yeah.
that it's like an ideal universal goal.
Yes, just an aspiration.
Or maybe as a
Or-
pageant country,
Pageant
a pageant
country.
crazy country.
Yes, yes.
World peace.
Scholars Unbound is a bi-monthly podcast or video series that showcases the voices of scholars who know no boundaries when it comes to the pursuit of knowledge. You will hear insights from their experiences as international scholars and how these influence their research, hoping to inspire future scholars to be fearless, global, and unbound. I'm your host, Dalia Simangan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this episode of the Scholars Unbound podcast and also the third installment of the ACONS Tokyo series. ACONS, or the Academic Council on the United Nations System, aims to promote the voices and perspectives of students from the Global South and those interested in the Global South, as well as their research on topics related to global governance and also those related to peace and security. This is a very special episode because for the very first time since I started the podcast last year, I'm meeting my guests in person. And I have here with me today my good friends, Harmond Marte and Candelaria. They're doing their PhD at the International Peace and Coexistence Program at the Graduate School of Humanities and Social Sciences here at Hiroshima University. Welcome to the podcast, Harmy and Lee.
Thank you, Dalia.
Right on to the first question. What is your research about?
I guess I'll go ahead. My research is on the peace and business nexus in Bangsamoro, Philippines. I'm trying to research, or the research is all about the involvement of the formal economy in the peace agenda in Bangsamoro, since the peace process is ongoing and the current or the studies in that area has long been about informal economy, about the cultural differences, the rido, and the conflict. I'd like to zoom in on the private sector and its involvement in the overall peace agenda in the region. So that's a small snapshot of my research.
Great. I think this is also very timely, and I think the involvement of the private sector is quite under research, relatively speaking, in terms of peace research. How about you, Lee? What's your research about?
Yes, I'm studying how war is memorialized in Southeast Asia by analyzing the meaning potentials that could be derived from monuments and memorials dedicated to war. So it's a multi and interdisciplinary study that draws on the fields of history, politics, international relations, and archaeology. And since I'm looking at how war is memorialized, or the memorialization practices evident in monuments and memorials, and how they serve the state's nation building project, or even the implications that they have for international relations. And I specifically look into the cases of the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, and try to identify the contours of memory politics in the region. And I'm hoping to represent the diversity of experiences and practices in the region by looking at these individual cases.
Great. I think also, in addition to the diversity of practices in the region, I'm glad that you are using your background in history in your research, because I think there's really a need of better engagement between history and peace building research, I think, right? So
Yes.
that's a great topic. Okay, my second question is, why did you decide to do your research about the Philippines? Philippines is one of your case studies, but why did you do your research about the Philippines here in Japan?
For my case, so I also finished my master's in the same graduate school here in Hiroshima University. And often, some of my classmates would ask me, why are you not researching directly or particularly on peace? Because my master's topic was on indigenous peoples group and the identity and their notion of what is peace in the Philippines as well. So one of the questions that I often get is why not Mindanao? Because when the most of the Filipinos here, particularly in the graduate school, are from Mindanao, at least in my time. And then most of the topics are related to Mindanao and peace issues. So that's one motivation. Number two, I feel that there are many professors in the graduate school. Well, we have Yoshida Sensei, promoting Kid Sensei, who's also into Mindanao, and I took up some of his classes. And it's quite refreshing to see a Japanese national researching and focusing on Bangsamoro particularly. And so why not I take part of this very dynamic and ongoing process as well. So those are, I guess, my two initial reasons why Mindanao or Bangsamoro particularly became a topic.
In my case, before coming to Japan, I prepared a PhD proposal on about a different topic, a totally different topic. I was thinking that when I was going to do my PhD in Japan, I'm going to do it in a different field because my master's was in history. So I thought I'm leaving history behind and I'm going into a topic or a field where it's more of political science and international relations. So that topic was still about Southeast Asia, but it was about regionalism and conflict management. But due to the pandemic, I had to change midway because I cannot do my archival research in the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta. So I had to think and change my topic, something I can do while I'm still here, something I can do where the field work can be scheduled sometime in the future. So I decided, why not just go back to where I'm comfortable or my research interest, which is really visual methodologies and the study of war and war remembrance. So it's interesting because doing something about the war or studying the war in Japan is quite a scary thing to do. Come to think of it, Japan is still quite sensitive when it comes to the Second World War, and to do it in Hiroshima, a place where, a place that is quite consequential for the war itself, I think it's scary at first, but what it taught me so far is that Japanese academics are quite open to talking about these topics, and this openness is something that I didn't expect. At first, I thought it's frightening. They might not be open to talking about stuff like this. It's quite contentious, but that's the whole point of studying things, right? And I think what it told me is that Japanese academics are quite open to a lot of topics, even if it includes war. And my advisor, Candelaria Sensei, assured me that everybody's welcoming, everybody's open, and that if I continue on doing a topic like this in Hiroshima, it's like hitting two birds with one stone, since it's not something that Hiroshima University is quite focused on yet, the study of memory. So it might make sense to do it here in Hiroshima. So I like that there's a sense of achievement somehow, or fulfillment, when I finish it. So I'm not yet done.
That's actually interesting because I think you won't be able to find out that this is actually a potential topic, right? Until you asked or maybe explored those, or maybe because of the pandemic too. I mean, I think this resonates with a lot of people too, that our field work, our research very much impacted by the pandemic, and we have to be creative on how to continue doing the data collection, especially when you have to go to the field. And I'm sure both of you tried this creative ways. But anyway, why do you think it's so important for students, for researchers to focus on maybe not just from the Philippines, but also other researchers from other parts of the world to look at peace research in the Philippines?
So my background prior to entering the graduate school in Hiroshima, I was part of a company that works on social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, sustainability, and often the topic zooms into environmental issues, labor rights issues, customer related issues, never something related to peace. So I know somehow after entering the university that corporations are involved in the community, and their involvement in the community impacts on the peaceful cohesion or social cohesion in the area, because they are operating in a location. And so I wanted to include peace in a study that somehow links this and highlights that peace is not a tangential issue. Rather, it should be part of the core standards when we operate as a business, as a private sector. And so that's why peace, private sector, Philippines, I'm trying to mold them all together in this study. but with highlighting, while highlighting the topic of peace, because the country is not so peaceful. Conflict issue is quite high, but I guess my sensibilities as from Manila, someone who's quite shielded with, physically shielded with the conflict issues. But when you travel and go to the field, you realize my realities are far different from those on the field or those living in conflict or areas in conflict. So that's one perhaps inspiration or motivation why peace should be studied as well and included, and why Philippines is a good topic for that. I mean, even attending some conferences abroad, they would often give Philippines an example. These are the things happening right now in Mindanao and Bangsamoro, and why are we, I mean, myself, Filipinos are not so aware of the changes? Is it because I'm not from Mindanao? Do I have a bias against Mindanao or Muslim communities? Of course, that's just not serious. I don't take that seriously, but that could be a reason why this is not a streamlined conversation in the country, or maybe also because of the president. I'm not sure, or the political climate that the what do you call this? The focusing on peace is not so much the focus. It's more on other topics, other conversations.
Yeah, for me, studying peace and conflict in the Philippines is very important. Mainly because I'm trying to approach it in an academic way, in the way the academe is set up in the Philippines. We're very disciplinal. It's like you cannot just study peace and conflict. You have to study political science first. You have to study history first before you focus on peace or in conflict. And the problem with this is that it's so limiting, and I think it betrays the nature of inquiry in itself, wherein we try to draw strength from multiple disciplines in trying to find answers to questions. Another thing is that, I don't know about you, but when I tell people that I'm studying peace in the Philippines, what they tell me is that, so what do you do? Like a colleague of mine was jokingly asking me, so what do you study? Do you study yoga? Do you study meditation?
Yeah.
Do you study Tai Chi? And I'm like, of course it's a joke, right? But I think peace is not operationalized in the Philippines in such a way that you look at it as something achievable. You look at it as a utopia, something we cannot achieve in the first place. Which, of course, belies the fact that we're studying it so that we can achieve it. And in the Philippines particularly, we are not aware that many of the structural issues that we face today, many of the hindrances to economic growth, for example, in many of our rural areas, all of these are hindered by the security situation or the peace and conflict situation, especially Mindanao. But of course, not just Mindanao. And not just the conflict in Mindanao. There are many other conflicts that could be subsumed under peace and conflict studies. So I think problematizing these questions as Filipinos, particularly, coming from the perspective of the Filipinos, is important so that we can use the deeper knowledge of culture to try to propose solutions to our problems. And these are problems that we know have existed for a long time already. So maybe we can contribute towards answering those questions, right? Or those problems.
We have trivialized world peace so much that it's like an ideal universal goal.
Yes, just an aspiration.
Or maybe as a pageant country,
Pageant
a pageant crazy country.
Yes.
World peace.
World peace.
Yes, like world peace.
But what you mentioned about the misconceptions about peace research or peace studies, I think that confirms even those misconceptions, confirm the need to really have a more robust peace research in the Philippines. And I don't even actually remember when I was in my undergrad, I don't remember choosing, or even if there was an option of peace studies or peace and conflict studies or peace research back then, maybe I was not just really aware of. And you're right that I think about the disciplines, right? Because peace research, peace is a very multidisciplinary topic or area. And I think there lies the danger of when we have, say, I did sociology back in the Philippines. So I finished sociology, and then only then I will study peace. Then I already have this quite narrow understanding or research approach on examining peace. But if you have, say, an undergrad degree in peace studies, then you have, from the very beginning, you already are very open to other disciplines, to other methodologies, to other approaches. So I think I hope that after you do your research here, maybe that's one of the goals, not just both of you, but other researchers coming from other disciplines as well to contribute to peace research in the Philippines. Fourth question, Lee, I will start with you. You are now on your second year, right? So you still have 1 year left in your research. So what are the next steps for your research project?
Well, I'm doing my candidacy examination soon to become a PhD candidate. Which
next
is
week, to be exact.
Next week. So maybe when this airs, I don't know, maybe I'm done with it. So I guess I will really find out if the Japanese academics are open to my topic. Because now I'm going to be talking to other people aside from my advisor. But more than that, I am intending to focus on my case studies for the rest of the year. Hopefully, if the pandemic situation gets better, maybe I can go to Thailand or Vietnam to do some field work, some much very needed field work. But if not, I'm going to spend the rest of the time writing and maybe trying to publish some papers here and there. Yeah.
And you already published some papers that are related to this topic as well.
I have several. Yeah.
So I will share the links to those publications in the show notes. And how about you, Harmond?
Yeah, for my case, I'm on my final semester. The next step is to write, finish writing rather, not just write, but keep on writing, keep on keeping on. Well, there's nothing more to do but just keep finishing and writing the final chapters of my paper.
You are almost done already, right?
Yes. Ideally, yes.
You are in the final leg
Yes,
of your research, so that's great. And you also publish an article coming from this research. So
a chapter.
A chapter of your thesis. So I will also link the publication in the show notes. Finally, I just want to hear your message to those who want to study in Japan or those who want to study peace research or peace research in Hiroshima University or here in Japan. What will you tell them?
First off, go for it. I mean, there should be nothing that should stop you from applying. Japan is very open to a lot of different types of research, but I think we must also be open to multidisciplinarity, and usually the programs are not the programs we are aware of. It's not disciplinal usually. So be open to trying out different programs, maybe focus on research questions that could really be answered by doing your study in Japan. Another is that do it as soon as you can. Especially for those like me who's already, kind of getting old to get a PhD. Of course, there's no age limit, right? But in Japan, actually, for scholarships, there is. So if you should make sure to beat that deadline so that you can do your study here. And Japan is very much close to the Philippines in terms of international relations. So let's take opportunity of especially for Filipinos out there, there's this big opportunity for us to study here. So take the chance while it's still there and get that graduate degree as soon as you can. Yeah.
And speaking of scholarships, maybe some of the listeners are wondering, what if I don't have the means, for example, or resources to go to Japan? Japan is not an inexpensive country to live in. So what would you tell them? What are the opportunities that they should look for in terms of funding their projects or study?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for funding. There's, of course, the Japanese government scholarships, the Mombuka Gakusho, or the MEXT scholarship, which is quite generous enough. But there are also private scholarships. There's a lot of them. I think, Dali, you're also a recipient of that, right?
Yes.
So don't worry about that. I think what for those wanting to study here, think first of the research that you want to do here, because funding is available definitely. It's just a matter of applying for them.
Particularly in Hiroshima, when you come here, you'll find out that junior high school students have started studying peace in their curriculum. So students in Hiroshima, young students are very conversant on the topic of peace. They are familiar with it. I'm not sure if someone has made a study on correlating high school students and their knowledge of peace and how they end up being in their adult life, but
how peaceful they become later
exactly.
on.
But for me, I do find Hiroshima people quite peaceful, or at least aware of the world. I mean, Japan is quite a closed society, but somehow Hiroshima being very quite international or very knowledgeable of international things with so many foreigners here, I bet that it has an impact. The knowledge on peace has an impact to their upbringing. So you can join the conversation if you come here to Hiroshima. You can learn a lot, even from young people, and be part of the young community that will forward peace and peaceful conversations. There are also many NGOs here based in Hiroshima United. There's a UN office here as well. So peace is everywhere as a topic, as a flavor, as an image. It's everywhere in Hiroshima. So if you are interested in it, I think Hiroshima really is a good place to start and build your career on the topic of peace. As for scholarship, also, I'd like to maybe put this forward now that you have to have also a good connection with your professor.
Right.
Once you enter here, of course, yes, a good topic is the foundation of having a scholarship, but also having good professors and good networks that would help you link to private scholarship if you don't have a public government scholarship from Japan. You can, people are very supportive. I guess that's the message I want to put across, that yes, it's quite scary to come here with no money or to be unsure of what will happen, but people will help you. That's my experience in Hiroshima. People will help you.
Also, my experience when I came to Japan. I will not say how many years ago. This is a very interesting conversation. I really learned a lot from both of you, and I'm optimistic that the peace research in the Philippines and elsewhere is in the right direction because of students and researchers like you. And I'm also optimistic that we're going to have a more multidisciplinary and even conversations, as you mentioned, conversations here in Japan about peace. Hiroshima is very much conducive to it, but I hope that conversations from this level also will transcend to conversations elsewhere. And I know by doing this research, we are already on the right direction. So thank you for your research contributions. Thank you for coming today and for your time. Especially Harmond, I know you're very busy with your final leg, and you are also preparing for your candidacy next week. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best in your research projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please consider leaving a comment or rating at iTunes or any of your preferred podcast hosting platforms. For details about upcoming episodes and how to support the Scholars Unbound project, visit dariasimangan.com/scholars unbound with the link in our show notes.